Thanks to everybody joining here today. We're going to give it a couple minutes and we'll get started. Once again, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. All right, we're going to begin. Welcome everybody to this really special installation of what we call our Secretary Speaker Series, where we bring together big thinkers, leaders across California on key priorities for an open and insightful discussion. Happy Earth Month, happy almost Earth Day, which of course takes place on Monday, April 22nd. I'm really pleased to be with you here and to have a conversation with a special leader, as well as, I should say, special leaders across the state driving climate action. My name is Wade Crowfoot, and I lead our California Natural Resources Agency. Along with Cal EPA, we have this incredible responsibility to protect and to steward this natural environment in California, and to work with all of you to do that. Our agency is big and diverse, over 25,000 men and women, 26 departments focused on this. And it's really exciting this month to come together with Cal EPA in a series of events, including one that we're holding on Monday. If you happen to be in and around Sacramento, we invite you to our agency headquarters here on right in downtown Sacramento. From 3 to 5 p.m., we're going to have a lot of different fun games and activities and exhibits from our departments across our environmental agencies. It's going to be a fun time. Please feel free to come, bring friends and family. It's definitely kid-friendly as well. And then there are other events that are happening, obviously, on Earth Day and Earth Month that we're really excited about. So you may have joined for one of these conversations before, but if you haven't, I wanted to share a couple things about our conversation today before we launch in. The first is that we use the chat function fairly regularly throughout our conversation. My colleague Geeta Chandra, who deserves credit for organizing these discussions, is staffing that chat. So as I introduce speakers, she often provides background information on the speaker or the organization they're coming from. And then as we talk about topics or ideas or items come up, she'll oftentimes put web links in the chat. So check out the chat or keep that open. That's a great informational resource. There's also a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You're probably familiar with this by now. If you want to ask a question at any point during our conversation or share an observation, you can do that, and it'll come right to us as panelists, and we can either respond to you directly or I'll work to build that into the conversation. This conversation, this dialogue is going to be recorded. So if you check back to our resources agency website in about a day, you'll be able to see and share a recording. And we'll also be able to copy all of the information provided in chat if there are certain resources that you want to access. Our agency headquarters website is resources.ca.gov. So let's jump into the conversation. And I'm so thrilled to have Adina Merenlender with us here today. Adina is a climate leader in so many respects across California. And we want to unpack that, including the fact, Adina, that you literally wrote a book on climate stewardship in California, taking collective action to combat climate change. And I planned on holding up the book, but I looked at my bookshelf over here and I realized that I lent it out in the last couple of weeks. Oh, there it is. Can you grab it and bring it to the... It's a beautiful, beautiful cover by our friend Obi Kaufman. And I love the book, Adina, because you're profiling real people across California, some of whom we'll meet today, that are taking action in their own lives and their own communities. So first, I wanted to ask you, how did you get the idea to write the book? And if you can, use that as a way to talk about the work that you're doing and sort of the arc that brought you to this point.
Great. Thank you so much, Secretary Crofin. I'm excited that we're starting, a lot of our Earth Day festivities with Earth Stewardship. And as you mentioned, the book is a book of stories of what people are doing, working together to advance community resilience and ecosystem resilience. And I am a conservation biologist. I look at the impacts to biodiversity. I work with others to do environmental problem solving. I do a lot of research in my work over the years. And that requires that I write a lot of scientific papers. And to be perfectly honest, those papers can be a pretty boring read. So when we launched into this project, recognizing that we'd be writing a book of stories and working in the narrative format, that definitely was a stretch for me. And I am very grateful to Brendan Buehler, who's a science writer, who had reworked some of the stories that I wrote and to make them move along a little bit faster. And he even added some humor, which, as you can imagine, isn't that easy when we're talking about climate change and climate action. So I'm grateful for that. And why we came to this idea that we needed to write a narrative book about stories came through a strategic planning process, actually, where experts came together to help design the UC Climate Stewards program. It's a public education and service program that is offered across the state. You're going to hear more about it today. And in thinking about how we wanted to structure that program, experts from all these different disciplines in education and science, in climate change, all agreed. There was complete consensus that what we did not need was another climate science book. First of all, that wouldn't be very engaging for the participants. And also, climate science evolves rapidly. It's always being updated, and it's really important to stay fresh on that. What they felt that we did need was to inspire people to take action, right? So that was the challenge, and basically became kind of this grounding principle for this book around climate action, was that if people are going to take action, they need to have a sense of hope. And that a pathway to feeling hopeful is definitely through joy. And one of the things that we know when we feel joyful is we are often engaged with others in some activity. We might be cooking together, we might be walking together, we might be taking action together, working together, and that can really, bring on this sense of joy, which we think is important. So in thinking about this project per se, I really had to set my sort of science hat aside. And as much as I love working on conservation biodiversity and helping 30 by 30 and the California Biodiversity Network, and working with others in research, and as much as I love all of that, the focus here was how do we identify, local, tangible, actionable ways in which people are engaging to address climate change with their community, and hope that that will foster the reader's sense of agency so that they leave reading the book feeling more confident that they can do something about climate change.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. And something I think we've learned is that this gloom and doom narrative is paralyzing for a lot of people. And so as I've understood, a lot of folks that are really digging into what motivates folks, that sometimes that people can turn that off, right? You just turn your eyes away from that story that talks more about the melting of the ice sheet in Antarctica, or, the threshold that we're reaching in a given year. To me, that's really important to be clear-eyed about just the acceleration of this impact. But to your point, maintaining hope. And a climate scientist that I follow, Catherine Hayhoe, who's an incredible climate communicator, talks about we maintain hope by taking action, and it's those actions in our lives, in our communities, that actually maintain that hope, and it's cyclical. And of course, Adina, this as a conservation biologist in California, there are great things happening in California and across the world, and restoration, regeneration, renewal is possible. So I found the book really energizing because it reminds us that You don't have to be involved in politics. You don't have to have a position like the one I'm in to actually affect change. How did you find these different people across the state, some of whom that we'll talk to today?
Yeah, well, as you point out, California is a big state. We are very geographically dispersed. We have a lot of diversity across our different communities, right? So we definitely were working to think about different geographies in which these actions are taking place, also different voices, right? And also really seeking volunteers so that it's not like you have to be an expert to make a difference, right? So that was a big push for us. I also want to say, just about, yes, it's so easy to feel the gloom and doom of the pending changes that we're experiencing through climate change and extreme events. The other thing that we really try to focus on is things that people can do together. Again, because sometimes if we sort of put a lot of emphasis on individual actions and tell people what you need to do every day to take care of the earth, it can be very disheartening. I mean, I know for myself, I feel like I'm never doing enough. And so really we weren't so focused on, the footprint and these individual actions, but really getting together community. And also that's the way we need to address climate change, right? Is through collective action, through community action. That's where we really have impact. So that was very, very important to us. And I also think that if we can, storytelling has been so important to the way we transfer knowledge, and the way that we share culture, since time immemorial. So, people read stories longer than they'll read scientific writing. They'll retain the information better. So we all need to, and I just want to say, CNRA and other folks in the state also share a lot of stories of what people are doing. And of course, there's so much going on there that it was absolutely impossible to capture it all in the book. But we did try to have a diversity of an array of stories out there. And I also just wanted to point out that I don't mean to suggest that science literacy isn't important. It is, and all the things that teachers are doing to bring that to bear is so critical. So we do try to weave in, I tried really hard to weave in the science, California specifically science content into the stories so that folks would learn as they go. And as Brendan Bueller always says, just trying to show, not tell people what to do. Everyone who interacts with children understands that when you try and tell someone, tell a child what to do, you're not necessarily going to get that outcome. It can be a little bit like telling folks what to do is like nails on a chalkboard. So we really focused on showing folks, hopefully inspiring them, and weaving in that climate information, weaving in that climate science in a way that we hope people will find is approachable and inspiring. And as you said, I know when I got a chance to speak to these amazing people that we're going to hear from, that they give me a lot of hope.
Absolutely. And so let's get to that. You chronicle, or you profile a bunch of different folks in the book across the state, and we've asked a few of them to join us today. And so I want to bring on Eileen Mitro onto the screen here. Eileen is a founding member of Mendocino Climate Action. And Eileen, as you and I got to know each other a little bit earlier in the week, you sort of explained that, you guys, built this, out of a sense that you wanted to do something, and you wanted to do something tangible. I admire that. So talk about how it all came together. What is it?
First, I have to respond to that conversation with Adina because someone told me a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. I think it's right. It's better to light one small candle than to curse the darkness. And that was after Climate Action Mendocino got started, but I thought, yes, that's what we're doing, something. So back in 2017, in October, we had scheduled a meeting because we were noticing that there wasn't very much coverage on climate change. There was an article here and there, but really not very much. Not like today, where you see a lot of articles and the catastrophes are way out of control. So we decided to get together with friends and colleagues and see if we could gather them together and make a difference. But as Adina mentioned in the book on Climate Action Mendocino, we had to cancel that October meeting because of the fires in Sonoma County and Mendocino County. But it was, as we saw it, more reason to have get some action underway in our community. We finally met and we planned efforts, as you were talking about, for individuals to lessen their energy use, LED light bulbs, better home insulation, reducing food waste, and walking, biking more, and even maybe buying an electric vehicle. People were interested. Then we started to show films, and one of them was called Tomorrow, Demain. It's a French film, and was about a lot of different initiatives in countries around the world on agriculture, energy, all sorts of things. One of the things I remember from that film was someone planting vegetables in those, I think they're called verves, those spots between the sidewalk and the street, and people could just come along and pick vegetables. It wasn't for any particular purpose except the public. Neat idea. Another film that was especially popular was called Paris to Pittsburgh, and it focused on, it was because Trump had said that he was responsible to the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris, and that's why he was pulling us out of the Paris Agreement. In starting out, the film started out with the mayor of Pittsburgh saying, "We are preparing for the 21st century and a clean future." So that was kind of fun. And there were lots of ideas on renewable jobs and transportation, land use around the country. We've tabled a lot for Earth Days. This is just the group that got together without any official designation other than Climate Action Mendocino. We had climate gatherings. We marched when countries around the planet were marching. We organized a forum with for the public, and we had city and county leaders, and in fact, Adina Merenlender as our keynote speaker. We've written articles, and we still have someone in our group who writes weekly articles that cover all sorts of aspects of climate change, global and the effects of climate change on the global economy, culture, and security. We've had tours. An interesting tour was the Material Recovery Center, and just the amazing amount of recycled material that came in every day. And then these line workers that would watch the things come by and sort them, just amazing.
And so, Eileen, you really bootstrapped this yourself with other interested folks, and you weren't waiting for permission. You weren't waiting for the county board of supervisors or some entity to come, and you guys just basically figured it out yourself. And it sounds like you came together.
That's where I wanted to go next. You're reading my mind, because we realized that doing these wonderful events was great, but we really weren't going to have any significant impacts without getting to local jurisdictions. So some of us were involved with an advisory climate group that got the Board of Supervisors to pass a climate emergency resolution. I'm going to call that CER, and that passed unanimously. And we've since noticed that staff will refer to the climate emergency resolution in the actions that they're taking. So they're not meaningless resolutions. Early on, we were kind of despairing about the city of Ukiah, which is about 17,000 population. And we didn't think they would go for a CER at all. We had talked with city planners and also with staff in the city, and got involved with the general plan. And then we were consulted and asked as stakeholders what we wanted. And I don't think any of that, and as it turned out, the general plan is awesome and involves a whole lot of climate and endeavors.
Hmm.
And I don't think that would have happened if we hadn't been involved. But the story I would like to share, if I have a minute or so more, is that we really wanted the city to pass a climate emergency resolution, a CER. And we had met with the staff and they were somewhat receptive, but we didn't think that the city council would go for it. So we decided to each of us took a city council member and met with them, and they were for it. We weren't expecting that at all. And they voted for it unanimously, and they're still functioning on that basis that, that this resolution, and it was a pretty powerful resolution. So
Incredible.
that was kind of exciting. Yeah.
And I can tell you in Sacramento, it's that grassroots support and advocacy and leadership that drives California to do what it's doing. Remarkably, as much progress as we're making, as much as California is leading the world on the targets and standards and programs and investments, California wants us to do even more because they understand we're on the front lines, and it's organizations like yours, Eileen, that are really driving us to do more. I'm gonna in a moment introduce our next panelist, but when we get back to the group, what I'd like to ask you when we get in the group conversation is what advice you have for others that feel like they want to do something that might not know how to take that first step to come together. But let's hold on that for a moment because thank you, Eileen. Next, I want to introduce Ava Post-Koo. Ava comes to us from South LA and specifically the Watts Labor Community Action Committee. And she's the interim director of Green Initiatives. So Ava, first of all, incredible background. Love it. And talk to us a little bit about what your organization, Watts Labor Community Action Committee, is all about, and then a little bit about what you're doing and then how you came to do the work.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. Pretty much a background of Watts Labor Community Action Committee is it started in 1965 during the civil rights movement era, and it started as a way after the Watts riots or Watts rebellion in the 60s in response to like police brutality, lack of jobs, and started as a way to get basically people of color and African Americans to have I would say like working jobs to reinvest into their own communities. And so Watts Labor Community Action Committee started pretty much as like grassroots carpenters and expanded into a ton of different social services that we have today. And we have a ton of different programs that address a whole host of range of social needs for the community in Watts. And so pretty much the Green Initiatives department that I am currently heading is kind of blending the environmental justice issues that are faced by our community here. And so Watts is a neighborhood that is in the 98th, 99th percentile of like environmental burden in the entire United States. So we have enormous levels of lead, particulate matters, soil contamination, air contamination, all of these different environmental justice issues. And I started working with WLCAC about 7 years ago on environmental surveying and literally going door to door and working in a grassroots way to speak and interview different community members about their perceptions of what environmentalism or climate change or even environmental burden looks like. And we found a lot of interesting things through this kind of like grassroots work. And I think it's really interesting. Something that we discovered is that water is a huge issue where I would say people of color and low-income communities are disproportionately affected by different economic stresses that go along with I'll say like the environmental contamination burden. So, people in our neighborhood have to buy most of their water. And so that's, thousands of dollars that already like low income communities have to pay just to have clean drinking water, which is wild when you think about South LA and Watts being in Los Angeles in an urban city. But, as we've progressed in the years, our kind of vision and method has always been to empower our own communities through different services and work. So what we're doing through green initiatives is bringing different kinds of programming so that we can help to bring education and knowledge to our community in a way that reaches them and is accessible. So, we have bilingual classes as our demographics have changed over the years to be a more Spanish speaking community. Let's see. I think like the program that is discussed in Adina's book is our Watts Yardners program, which is a really awesome program that we were able to kind of like bring to life through a grant with California Strategic Growth Council's Transforming Climate Communities grant. It's a huge mouthful. But that program is one where we are installing 50 backyard or front yard, as it often is in our area, urban gardens and farms, so that that go along with classes and education for community members on how to grow food to help supplement their diets and increase that green space, to help reach those, I'll say like those climate metrics that grantees love to talk about to reduce carbon. And we also run a 2.5 acre urban farm park. So it's a public park that's kind of in the center of Watts, which is an amazing, I'll say green space for our community to come and, people can come in for free. It's open all day, every day. And we get to have these kinds of conversations about what, I'll say like what climate change and climate action and health equity looks like on the ground.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible. A couple of things I want to just, I take away from your comments. One is, the work of your organization really listening to local communities on what it wants and what it needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud. I'm part of the Strategic Growth Council at the state, and this program, it's a mouthful, as you say, Transformative Climate Communities, TCC, is all about identifying, communities that come forward and say, hey, we want to define our future, and we're going to, set priorities, and then the state's funding those priorities, but not priorities that are set here in Sacramento. Programs like that folks in South LA and Watts are developing. So
yeah,
I really appreciate that. We're joined by upwards of 150 people here today, some of whom might not work in communities that are, suffer from, legacy environmental burdens, environmental racism.
mm-hmm.
So, putting you a little bit on the spot, what would you say
Sure.
to those folks who haven't, who don't live in those communities? How can we support the work of your organization and EJ leaders or environmental justice leaders doing this work?
Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting question. So how can people outside of EJ communities help, is what you're saying?
Yeah. And given that the traditional environmental movement, in the 60s, 70s, it kind of had a major blind spot as it relates to addressing this environmental inequity and racism.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I think that it really comes down to contributing resources. So I would say that a major challenge for grassroots environmental organizations is funding.
Mm.
And, that's even been a challenge with our TCC grant. I'll go off the book a little bit here. And we have had challenges. So Watts was the first grantee or the first round of grantees for the TCC funding. And, I think funding is such a huge part of it. And so in the first round of the TCC grantees, it was based on a reimbursement process. And so it basically expected
You
grassroots
guys to front the money.
organizations to front all the money.
Yeah.
And so, it's a huge challenge that, us as an organization have really struggled with. So, we haven't been paid in a year. So
Yeah.
it's crazy sometimes. And so I would say, talking about the funding landscape and, how can grantee funders be better funders through either advanced payment or
Yep.
yeah, that kind of, I think advanced payment, donations, cutting down I would say like bureaucratic reporting.
Yeah.
So
I'm 100% with you. I mean,
yeah,
first of all, thanks for being spontaneous because I like to keep these conversations dynamic. So,
yeah, of
and also
course.
being real about it,
Mhm.
So one thing is, just for everybody that's listening is, our agencies, our public agencies used to essentially perpetuate inequity because
Yeah,
our systems or our programs are so complex. They require a lot of people and time and even funding to try to apply for the funding.
yeah,
So the folks that were getting the funding, the communities were getting the funding, were those that were already resourced to ask for the funding. So we're putting that we are on a journey to flip that on its head, to measure the amount of funding that's going into underserved and underinvested communities and hold ourselves accountable. And in many cases, there's actually baseline in terms of the amount of funding that needs to get into these communities. But then, as you point out, is we can't expect community-based organizations or underinvested cities to front large sums of money.
yeah.
So things like advance payment are critical. We have to reduce the bureaucracy. We have to make this funding more available. So I will say we acknowledge that, and we're making some progress, but clearly not enough. If you've got you're sitting there with with a year of cost that you don't have reimbursed. So thank you for being honest about that, and I think it reveals the work we still have to do. So I want to continue to talk to you in the group, but I want to introduce our next panelist participant here, and that's Ashley Terry. And Ashley is based in the Bay Area and works at the Oakland Zoo. But Ashley, we're actually not going to talk about the zoos necessarily or animals, but really the work that actually you're doing teaching climate stewardship. So I'm really interested to understand a little bit more about how you came to the work of teaching climate stewardship, what it means, and a little bit of sort of your reflections, given that we're at Earth Week and talking about stewardship.
Awesome. Yeah. Into this work through taking the UC California Naturalist course. I took that in 2018 and was really inspired to continue down that journey. Or down that road. And I ended up going back to school, getting my master's in environmental education. And then through talking with those that lead the California Naturalist programming through UC A&R, I signed up for the Climate Steward Instructor training. And so I was in one of the first or second cohorts of individuals to take that course. I signed my organization up as a partner, not necessarily asking for permission, but asking for forgiveness afterwards. And we ended up offering the environmental courses. The first course that we offered was the Climate Steward course. A lot of times when you think about zoos in terms of conservation, you think about animal conservation and you think about saving endangered species. I really wanted to take that a step further, not only saving endangered species, but also saving endangered cultures. And a lot of that ties into climate change itself. When asking members of the community what their first thoughts on climate change were, or who do you think is affected by climate change, a lot of times people will say, oh, climate change is something that affects polar bears, or climate change is something that affects African elephants. And we here in California don't have polar bears, we don't have African elephants, so it's not something that we necessarily need to think about or even get involved with, because if that animal goes extinct, what does that do to me living here in Oakland? And so I really try to turn that around and really look at what is right outside your own back door. A lot of times when people think of the wild, they think that you go away to the wild, and not really realizing that the wild is all around us and we are all interconnected. And it's really important that we respect and acknowledge that interconnectedness. So through the program, the Climate Steward course, I'm able to not only share those stories that are in Adina's book, but also take the students on field trips to local wastewater treatment plants or to neighboring farm parks. And through guest speakers, we're able to introduce what is happening right here in Oakland. And so one of the things that I incorporate into our Climate Steward course is looking at climate action plans. And a lot of times people have no idea that their city has a climate action plan. And a lot of times those climate action plans are dated. For example, the one here in Oakland is the 2030 Equitable Climate Action Plan. We are in 2024, and I asked all of my students, have you heard of the 2030 Climate Action Plan? And everyone says no. And so I invite them at that time to really investigate their city's climate action plan, be vocal. A lot of times people get upset, and I say, yes, use that energy, get upset, take action, share it with other people so that we can all collectively work together to really combat climate disruption that is happening in each and every community.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm drawing so much from what you're sharing. One, that you stepped up and you said, we're going to do this, and you didn't wait for a big bureaucratic process. Two is like bringing your leadership and authentic self. I love the bats in your background. And then I looked at your bio in the chat, and you've got a special place for bats. So like bringing that passion, right, and bringing that personality to this is incredible. Geeta, I want to make sure that in this conversation we try to include a link to what Ashley was talking about in terms of the courses that she took. The University of California and the Ag and Natural Resources, I think, is what UCANR stands for, and they've got incredible programs, including this climate stewardship curriculum and program. Ashley, I'm interested. How do people in Oakland get turned on to the work or to these classes? Like, who's coming to your classes? Is it kids? Is it adults?
We offer our classes to students 16 to 79. So it's a wide variety of students that can participate. The classes that we hold here at the zoo are virtual or hybrid. So our online discussion takes place on Zoom, and then we have in-person field adventures. And with that, it makes it really unique because the class that I'm teaching right now, it actually ends on May 2nd. We had our closing session last night. I've got students from Sacramento, there's students from Palo Alto, there's students from Rohnert Park. So it's a collection of people all throughout the Bay Area working together, making those connections, and then hopefully after the class is over, continuing that work. And that's one thing that I really try to highlight, is that through taking courses like this or through reading books like Adina's book, it's not something that you just do and then you set it down and you're like, okay, great, now I'm going to go do something else. It's something that I'm hoping inspires you to keep moving, keep making those stories, keep taking that action, and don't let it be something that you complete and now I'm going to go figure out something else to entertain myself.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, you reference these climate action plans from the cities, and so much of what we can do in our own communities, yes, it addresses climate change, but that's a planetary challenge. It also improves the local community. In our agency, we're really big. We're trying to push with partners on creating more green schoolyards. So getting shade in schools, taking out cement and pavement and trying to put in grass. It lowers the temperature as we get these extreme heat events. It also does really good in terms of absorbing carbon. But also, it's just great for the kids, and the kids like it, right? And the communities like it. It's urban greening, for example, too, or conserving an area
Definitely.
and opening it up to the public. So it seems like these local climate actions not only benefit this big, climate crisis that we're trying to confront, but they also improve our communities.
And it's something that people can see. You can see the change that you're making. Again, everyone sees the commercials where it's got this really skinny polar bear on this little piece of ice, and you send money someplace, and hopefully that money gets to that polar bear. But you never really know. When you're working within the community, you can see those changes take place. You can see that action, and hopefully that's inspiring to extend that change outside of your community. So it really does start at home. Within your own community, within your own backyard, and making those connections with people to make that change.
Well, huge thanks, Ashley, for demonstrating that leadership of actually, each one teach one, and let's do this work and lead this work in our own communities. And that's a great segue to our last panelist before we jump into a group conversation, and that's my friend and colleague Sunshine Swinford. Sunshine is the director of the Climate Action Corps. So I'm really excited that Governor Newsom, our legislature, have invested in what we call a service corps across California. That's larger than the U.S. Peace Corps, right, Sunshine? So talk a little bit about Climate Corps, and one of the reasons you weren't specifically in Adina's book, but I wanted to bring you on because we were talking, we're talking about people stepping up in their own lives to make a difference, and we've now got this set of programs to enable people to do that. So I'm excited that you're here, and if you would share a little bit about that work.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and happy Earth Month, everybody. So we are the California Climate Action Corps sits with California volunteers, and we are a state office really focused on service, volunteering, and civic action. And how do we create those opportunities for everyday Californians to get involved, whether you have, an hour to give, a day to give, or maybe that longer term commitment through one of our AmeriCorps programs, such as the California Climate Action Corps. I'll talk a little bit about the programs that touch climate action, because we actually have about 5,000 service members throughout all of our programs that are really working on climate action and stewardship. First is College Corps. It's really
you said 5,000. Sorry to interrupt, but you have 5,000 across California.
Across our service programs that participate in climate action and stewardship projects. So it's awesome. And we're growing and hope to continue to scale because of that investment from the governor, from the legislature, prioritizing service and volunteerism, support from our partner state agencies such as CNRA. We're really lucky to really have that, to be able to prioritize, again, service in California. So College Corps, we're in our second term, and we're saying to a whole new generation of college students, hey, if you're willing to help your community and serve 450 hours during the academic year, you could do climate action, work, support food insecurity, tutoring and mentoring youth. We'll help you pay for college. Students across, we have 46 partners across universities, UC, CSUs, community colleges, some private schools. They get $10,000 for their commitment to serve for that academic year. And the College Corps program alone, those service members are going to contribute over 1 million hours. So it's quite large. Youth Job Corps is also new. It's focused on providing service opportunities to former foster youth, underserved youth, justice-involved youth, youth that typically don't have access to service programs. We're creating opportunities for them to give back and really feel valued for their worth and their value to society, while also launching a career. We just started a Core to Career program that launched last week. So we not only want to provide opportunities during their service term, but what happens after that? Can we create pathways into, a lifetime of service? And then the California Climate Action Corps, which I head up at California Volunteers, is really, again, the first of its kind service program solely focused on climate change. Fellows are placed within, city departments, tribes, schools, nonprofits. The community partners highlighted today. We've had fellows do volunteer projects at some of those sites as well. They also earn a living stipend and an education award for their full-time commitment for a year of service. They focus on nature-based solutions like urban greening, organic waste and edible food recovery, wildfire resiliency projects. And the mission is really, our fellows are also organizers. They also work on bringing other people into the project. So there's a big volunteer engagement component that each fellow has to focus on, as well as direct climate action that they perform. So if you take all of these programs I just mentioned, and you said it earlier, Secretary, was our service corps is larger than the Peace Corps just in California. So we're really excited about that and want to continue to grow it. I'll just say one last thing is that we not only the service piece, where folks do have the ability and time to contribute more to climate action, we operate on what's called the pyramid of civic engagement. So at the top of the pyramid are those service positions. But the middle level of the pyramid is we've had a lot of success over the last year and a half, building up, having these collective, regional climate action days. We have one in Oakland, to give a plug, tomorrow, actually, Community Climate Action Day in Oakland. This is where, anybody from the community can come in, have that collective action together by planting trees or starting a community garden at a school. Lots of different projects happen. And then we add the fun element. Like tomorrow we're having, folks can go at Liberation Park in East Oakland. We're bringing my friend, Roller Dance Man, to add some skating fun and feed the community after, they take climate action together. So I'm all about the fun as well and building community. And I think that's what we're really trying to do at California Volunteers is, hey, let's have that. Let's take that climate action together, but then let's build community. Let's bring hope. As we've heard that mentioned today, it's all about hope and opportunity. So that people feel connected, and then when they're taking those individual actions, maybe in their everyday life, but they're part of something larger, and it drives you to want to continue to take your climate journey and take that next step.
That's incredible. Sunshine, thanks. And Gita put in the chat all of those different programs. So let's bring this back into a group conversation for the remaining time until the top of the hour. We're getting some really good input and questions in on the Q&A. So for those joining who have a question or want to share a thought, a couple of things I'll just share. Emily wants to understand if there are California Native American-led organizations doing climate work. That's a big priority of ours at the agency to build tribal partnerships, really to listen and learn from tribal stewards. So if, in our conversation addressing that, there's some conversation about ensuring that these programs are accessible to folks who speak another language. And then also, Sunshine, for our programs at the state, not only for young people like those in university, but opportunities for older Californians to serve as well. Let me start with a question that I was going to ask for Eileen, but I opened it up to anybody, which is, what advice do you have for people who might be tuning in that are interested in doing more than they're currently doing? They want to get more involved on taking action on climate change and maybe in their community. Any advice, whether it's starting an organization or figuring out what to do?
Well, since you asked me, I'll address that.
Please.
I think that if you have a friend or a couple of friends, I'm not talking about a lot of people that are interested in a topic on doing something or even bringing awareness to something, have those friends send out emails or call their other friends or connections in nature communities or whatever, and have a meeting at a park and at a picnic table. Just set the time and the date, and you will be amazed at what you can accomplish from there.
Yeah, just take that first step, which requires some courage.
Yeah, but you do it anyway with friends. You're talking about, this is just sort of a let's come and talk about this.
Yeah, that's amazing. Adina, what are your thoughts? You spend a lot of time with a bunch of different people.
I just wanted to mention, I'm so glad that you said something about Indigenous stewardship and tribes and tribal community leadership. It's a fantastic to uplift those efforts as much as we can. I want to shout out to the new California Tribal College, which is now going to be working with Sacramento State to do some accredited programming. And they offer the California Tribal Naturalist course. Also, the newly developed Indigenous Stewardship Network that now has a new website up. So these, we often are looking to Native Californians for their wisdom and really trying to think about how we view stewardship and the importance of Indigenous stewardship.
That's great. Yeah, so important. Cynthia shares a lot of good information, including the idea of, as I understand it, connecting the California naturalist training with adult education to really connect in, those curriculums, interest in nature, job pathways, with people who are immigrating into California, English learners. So it seems like there's a lot of potential there as well. And then I would just say, if there are links for more information for those who on online resources available for outreach for those doing tabling and getting people active in their own communities. Sunshine, I have a question for you. Cal Volunteers organizes these Climate Day of Actions, and you typically get a few hundred people to do something. How do you select the cities, and can people raise their hand and say, come to my community?
Yes, absolutely. We actually had almost 900 at our last one with the city of Richmond. So they can be larger. I think tomorrow's will be about 400 folks. But yeah, definitely, we're open to we want to go everywhere. We're also going to be going into more rural counties where we haven't been. So, reach out to me. I'm happy to figure out if somebody is motivated. We'll come.
That's amazing. Hey, on this question around older volunteers, I know, Sunshine, that there was an effort around trying to mobilize California seniors on this, and that there, where does that stand? And because Shannon is suggesting, boy, is there a way that you could mobilize folks, many of whom are probably retired, 55 plus, that have time and energy on climate?
Yeah, I know we're looking into a California Senior Corps.
Nice.
I'm not sure what stage that's in, but I know that, yeah, you're exactly right. Folks have time, and they want to get connected. I know with our new program, Neighbor to Neighbor, there are a lot of seniors and older folks that are joining that. It's not a service program, but it is opportunities to connect with your neighbors, take climate action, do hyper local things. And then one last comment I'll say is that Climate Action Corps is not limited. There's no age restriction. So we have had older folks serve, and they can apply and serve. We've seen some folks mid career, they want to switch careers, and so they join Climate Action Corps. So it's not all young folks.
That's helpful to understand. And in fact,
yeah.
I've interacted with some of those folks that are in the mid career doing it. I'll tell you, we have 2 Climate Corps members working in our Office of the Secretary, and they're incredible. And the idea is it's a great way to pivot into doing work on climate change. So much creativity. Mike suggests if you drive an EV, how about attending the Cars and Coffee with it, which sounds like an event to people show off their cars. He's done it in Folsom, and he brings his old Bolt to show folks that don't know, they haven't really touched and, talk to somebody in an electric vehicle about what it's like. So, it doesn't have to be, you don't necessarily have to, form an organization or take on a big complicated project. It's sometimes just sharing with folks how you're integrating more sustainable lifestyle in your own life to turn other people onto this. we've got 5 minutes left, and maybe we'll do just one last round here. So I wanna ask you something that is, how about this? As we approach Earth Day, what is encouraging to you? What gives you hope? I think we all realize, those that are tracking climate change, just this tremendous challenge we have in terms of the acceleration of its impacts. But what's giving you hope or some energy, either out of this conversation or in the work that you do or the people that you talk to? And we'll start at the top with Adina.
Right. Well, I'll tear off with something I already mentioned, but just to say that what really gives me hope right now is Indigenous stewardship and land back movement. I just think that there is so much that we can all benefit from. We can all come home where we all live here, and really tapping into those programs, supporting those programs, and seeing them and advancing those objectives is very hopeful for me.
Absolutely. And more to come on that as it relates to how we're turning in state resources to support tribes returning their ancestral land to their ownership and stewardship. Eileen, how about you?
Yeah, there's a lot of hope. I never thought I'd say that, but there's a group, and maybe you can help me, Secretary Crowfoot, on the new name, but it had been recently California Jobs First. It's a program. The name keeps changing, but there are 13.
That's the right name.
Yeah, good. There are 13 areas in the state working on this, and it includes tribes and workforce development, and ours in Mendocino Lake, Humboldt, and Del Norte is called Resilient, Inclusive, Sustainable Economy. And boy, it's a powerful organization, and we're just getting underway. A lot of meetings and a lot of interaction. So that gives me hope. I got to say one more thing. There's a wonderful book, Climate Restoration, about capturing carbon that's already in the atmosphere and getting down to 300 parts per million by 2050. Oh boy, did I feel hopeful. So I recommend it. Thanks.
Incredible. Thank you. And more news to come from us on that nature-based solutions to remove and store carbon in our landscapes. We're working on that. Ava.
Oh, wow. I think that there is definitely, for me, I'm hopeful for our, newer generation of climate stewards and young people getting involved. We work with a lot of youth in our communities, and I also see a lot of potential in, emerging technologies, as far as, how far I would say tech has advanced even in the past 5 years is crazy. So I think that, I'm hopeful. I don't think that technology will save everyone, but I think that there's definitely opportunities there. And also there's another level of like connectedness through technology that young people have. And I think that I'm hopeful with the farm to like build out more of these like third spaces where people can meet in real life to kind of discuss these things too. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
Wow. We'll keep up the good work in LA.
Thank you.
Ashley.
I'm hopeful, or what gives me hope is the changing landscape of for years on end. It's normally been a space that is represented by white wealthy people, and I think it's really important that that space is becoming more inclusive and including members of all communities, and with that inclusive connection, that gives me hope to find solutions for the future.
Amazing. And thank you for being a leader, manifesting that reality, really helping build your vision. Sunshine.
Yeah, I feel like there's just so much momentum right now. You know, things that you talk about us being on the front line, we really are in California, and folks are seeing what we're doing and then copying it in their own community, you know, other states, you know, so even with Climate Action Corps, you know, Biden announced last year the American Climate Corps, and now states are uniting around this. And so it's not just in California where, you know, we've been doing climate stuff for some time. It's spreading, and that's what we need. So that's hopeful.
Mm. Well, I'm hopeful because I get to meet and learn about people like you guys here. And, you know, I know you're representative of so many more people that Adina profiled in her book. It's just incredible. I mean, the fact is, great things are happening across California, across the world. Yes, it's benefiting, you know, these big crises we're confronting across the planet, like climate change, but it's also making change in regular communities, real people's lives. So huge thanks for giving us a boost of energy and optimism and hope as we head into Earth Day. So thank you for everything that you do. And as we always do, as we sign off, I want to ask James and Geeta to move to our last slide and share that last slide. So check out Climate Stewardship, incredible book, link at the top of the chat here. And if you have questions or comments or requests for us in our office, please hit us up on this email address, secretarysuggestions@resources.ca.gov. Huge thanks to everyone who's joining. I know that probably almost everyone who's joining is taking similarly impressive action. Together, we maintain hope by taking action. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great Earth Day coming up here on Monday.